Broadcasting. Welcome everybody. So we'll get participants start rolling in. Should start seeing their names popping up. There's Terry. I know for a fact Terry's from Canada.
Yes, hi Terry.
Especially when you see a name spelled like that, it's usually TJ, Janelle, Drew, Jason Rush, all the way from Phoenix, Arizona. We got a few more people kind of popping in. Mr. Lancaster, shout outs. Stacy, Robert, and one lonely phone call listener. Somebody's in their car. The one person who happens to be in their car today, Hilary.
Do what you got to do to get out of the house.
I get it. Especially when the sun's shining. It's about 72, 73 degrees and sun shining here. What do you got in Austin, Texas today?
About 95.
Oh my God, is it really that warm?
Yeah, glorious.
That's crazy.
Everyone is social distancing by going paddle boarding.
What kind of board do you have?
First world problems. Oh, I don't use a board. I try not to own stuff.
Oh, you just rent them?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm lazy, Andy.
We have a good friend of ours started a paddleboard company many years ago down the Gulf Coast of Florida. So I was curious if you had one of those.
Yeah.
So, as you're coming in, hey, Chip Cunningham, hope you're doing well. As you're coming in, remember a couple of quick things. We are recording this because I always get asked that question. We will be putting it into our blog on our website, so petracoach.com in the blog section. And we will send out a recap after this. So we have someone on right now. I think Janelle's on taking notes. So that's kind of cool, Hilary. She's going to take all the notes and automatically put it into a blog post and a recap with a link to the video for this. So it all goes out by the end of the day. And then Kristen McLean, have I seen her name? Hilary, have you seen Kristen McLean? Oh, there she is. Kristen McLean is on here with us again. She's been doing a few of these for us where she comes on and you've seen where they, somebody comes on and draws the actual meeting. So you get this really cool representation of what you're talking about. So Kristen does that. Her company is thevividinkcompany.com, thevividinkcompany.com. So I want to make sure I give her a little bit of a plug because she's taking her time out to do this for us. And we'll share that image with everyone at the end as well as in the blog post and then point you back to her website should you need services. She's really, really cool when you see it. Quick introduction of Hilary, and they give me these show notes that I go by. So hold on. Hilary is the founder and CEO of Corna Partners, an organization that helps mid-cap growth companies fix broken processes from scaling too fast by humanizing them to become market leaders in their industry. She's also a former senior executive with Toyota Asia Pacific, best-selling author, global keynote speaker, and host of the show Reimagine the Restart, which is very, very applicable to the work that we're doing today. Now that the markets are reopening, you need your restart strategy. In today's session, Hilary is going to help you develop your core COVID-19 operations restart strategy in real time. So everybody make sure you have a pen, make sure you have a piece of paper. We're going to go through this quickly. If you do have questions along the way, please put them in the Q&A box. I'll jump in and ask those questions of Hilary. You ready to go, Hilary?
Let's do this.
All right, get it started.
Well, thanks for having me. And just to make a minor adjustment, it's customer operations reset. So today is all about your current customer base, how to drive more business, more renewals, more repurchase, more referrals, and generate new revenue streams on the other side of this. So if you're having a little Zoom fatigue, today is all about action and results. By the end of this session, I want you to have concrete ideas for how to generate value for customers that you can eventually charge for, as well as strategies for moving back into the marketplace in a very smooth, effective transition. So today is not necessarily going to be theory. It's all going to be practical, very implementable content. I want you to be doing business. and people are buying. So that's what we're going to talk about today. As Andy mentioned, I used to run process improvement Kaizen activities for Toyota out of Singapore. Ever since coming back to the States, I have been leading teams to help implement process improvement and also humanization across all departments of an organization. And so my mission in everything that I do is how do we get better results from the work that we do? So how do we work smarter? As Andy knows, Andy and I are, you can call us OCD when it comes to processes, but I believe that by humanizing them, you can actually get better results. And so we'll talk about what some of the market leaders are doing today, how that trend has evolved post-COVID, and how you can take part in this hidden human competitive advantage. So what does it mean when we say real-time reset? We all have, I mean, what we were doing in business 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago is almost long gone. Overnight, we've created new operations. So today we're going to talk about how that transition is occurring into this human era. We're going to talk about what those traits look like, what the companies are doing to really capitalize and build trust with their consumer base, which actually leads to them buying from them. And then we'll develop your own reset plan and introduce the ODA method that you can continue to iterate as the needs and wants of your consumer base is continuing to iterate. That will then guide a conversation of how do you build your pipeline now, which is the fun part. So in general, as we talk about these conversations, I want to be very clear that I believe in serving your customer. I believe in giving first, and I believe that's how you move from a transactional relationship to one that's more meaningful. You have built your businesses for several years now. You have worked so hard to build your customer base. They are your biggest asset right now. So we'll talk about how actually serving them can help you in the long term. So let's start with what we mean by the human era company. Has anyone, and feel free to just note it in the chat with Andy if you've seen this advertisement that went out. If anyone's a fan of Natural Lights, you may have seen it. Natty Light kind of recognized that one of their biggest constituencies, college students, could no longer go to graduation. So instead of pushing their normal advertising campaigns, they adapted their campaign to actually make this commencement address, which with some pretty prominent people, including Mark Cuban. And so what does this do? This really appeals to the heart of what some people are really struggling with. Many of us have children, many of us have families, their kids are struggling with this, even those that are getting their PhDs that can't walk across the stage. And so this is not a campaign just to be funny. It's really a campaign that appeals to people's hearts. So that was a big successful move on Natty Light's part. Aflac recently released a video that is called Gratitude. I don't know if you've seen any of this. If you have, feel free to send Andy a chat. But they released a video that was all about how consumers, their insurance consumer base, was grateful for the help that Aflac's been providing them navigating their medical costs and bills. Because what Aflac found was that consumers were most embarrassed when they found out they had a medical bill that they weren't covered by their insurance with. And so Aflac released a big statement by their leadership saying, we're shifting from this duck awareness, which is just a funny symbolism, to actually getting back to, they quote, say, their roots in serving our customers and better understanding their needs and evolving our products and service to address that needs. Another example of this, just released last week, I'm sure many of you have seen it, Airbnb. They seemed like a perfect company, right? Almost flawless. And then obviously the travel industry was flipped on its head. So what did the CEO, Brian, do? Eventually he had to resort to layoffs. Now this is a message he released last week to the whole company as well as to the public, basically giving his rationale for why they had to resort to layoffs. So if you have read, or if you're a part of my following, I run a weekly newsletter called The Human Way. And a few weeks back, I talked about how to prevent layoffs. But we all know sometimes layoffs are just inevitable. But the beauty of this article, and I really encourage you all to go read it, because this man was so vulnerable and so honest. He shared things in this letter that he did not need to share. On top of that, they went above and beyond to offer resources and benefits for their people that are unheard of compared to other people doing layoffs. So I really encourage you to do this, but what does this do? It makes you want to work for this guy because he was honest, because he was truthful, because he was transparent. He admitted his mistakes in this letter. It almost makes you want to support him even though he's having to do a really hard thing. So those are just 3 examples of just in the last week, companies that are really capitalizing on this idea of being human, understanding the deep empathetic perspective of what their consumer base is going through right now, and then iterating their products to deliver on that. What I don't want to happen is you love your customer base so much so you push your current products and services and really is not addressing their need. I won't name the company, but there's a training firm that I saw do this where the week of coronavirus hit, they released a $500 course on how to work in a virtual environment. Now, I don't know about you, but my feed was overwhelmed with free information on how to work in a virtual environment. And they were charging $500. It flipped on its head. It totally tanked. No one bought it. And it actually lost trust in their consumer base. So as we move into this conversation, I really invite you to kind of take all your lessons and experiences from the past, and let's start this conversation today. Let's be very present in what's happening with your consumer base today, letting go of everything you've done in the past. So how do we do that? There are 6 traits that we can identify now that human era companies have. 1, I've already alluded to. They have deep, deep customer empathy. They have a very serious pulse on what their customers are going through. Petra is a great example of that. This webinar series is a great example of addressing a need of your customer base. They talk and act like real people. There's no corporate jargon. There's no, I'm sure you guys have all seen it, where companies come out with words that say statement or response plan. That is cold, heartless, and unexciting. So talk and act like real people, because no one goes out and says, this is our statement about COVID. They're open, real, and even flawed, as Brian, the CEO of Airbnb, mentions in his letter, but they admit their mistakes. They aren't boring. So please use this opportunity to have fun, make light, create whatever levity you can, because people have a lot of heaviness in their life right now. They care intensely about the little things. So Starbucks, as an example, when you get your Starbucks drink and they sign your name on it, you feel very special and you feel like they thought specifically about you. But in fact, that is a standardized SOP. That is something that they designed into the Starbucks experience. So they care intensely about the little things, even as big as they get. And then lastly, they empower individuals to be the brand. So if you're not already, encourage your employees to talk about what's happening in the company, to encourage your employees to have a statement about what's going on in the world. This is what human era companies are doing versus controlling or limiting what people can say, and that could be for employees or for the customer base. So for today's conversation, I am going to go deep into customer empathy. Why? Because I believe this is where your dollars are, and we'll talk about some results that we've already seen from doing this. So this is not just subjective information. There's a consulting firm out of Lippincott out of Boston named Lippincott that did a study that showed that companies that have these traits outperform their peers that don't have these traits by 11% on the Dow. And then on top of that, they have a 2 times more likely statistic to be referred to by their customers. So this is not just pie in the sky ideas. These are tactical, very real things. And the question I kind of pose to you is, do you want to keep plugging away at building your funnel, or do you want to generate more value and business from your existing funnel? And that's really the choice that, that any company has to make at any given point in time. And what I believe is that you have more sustainable, more longevity in your business by focusing on your existing customer base and using that to drive more leads into your funnel. So Stephen Covey said, and he's very famous for this quote, "When trust exists, things happen faster and more effectively. When trust does not, things happen slower and less effectively." So I'd be curious right now to take a brief moment and throw in the chat any company that you've seen that has made, to their remiss, made a mistake by either forcing a product or service, or by overcharging, or by kind of making a mistake in their advertising that's actually lost trust in their customer base. If you have an example of those, I'd love for you to channel it through Andy, and we'll share it here.
So Jason Rush says Frontier Airlines. I'll give you my example. Early on in this kind of pandemic, maybe it was the end of March, and I've taken 2 of these trips before on, and I'll use the name here because I'm pissed at them, but moorings, the ones that, you know, they rent you a boat and you go stay on the boat, and usually in the islands or something like that. It's a really cool trip. But very early on, they sent out this, now is the best time for you to invest in yacht ownership. Right into my feed. And I'm like, that doesn't feel exactly like you are thinking about what the hell you're saying to people right now.
Yeah.
And there's probably plenty of other examples. Again, Jason says Frontier Airlines. I don't know if you're familiar with what they may have done.
No, I haven't seen Frontier, but it does make you giggle a little bit because it's not a surprise. Yeah, another example of kind of a company that's trying to save the day right now, and their business is doing really strong but has struggled, is Instacart. The way they've been handling their shoppers. The shoppers have been pushing for safety because they haven't gotten it. They've gone public. They've protested over and over again. And Instacart's brand reputation is suffering because of it, because they're not taking the time to push that safety for their employees. So I think what we're seeing right now is, Mark Cuban said it weeks ago, but we're seeing it real time now, is that people are going to remember you right now for how you treated them. Excuse me, let me repeat that. People will remember you for how you are treating them now. And that was evident before, but it's even more evident now. If you have more examples, feel free to run them through chat as we continue on with this conversation. So I'm going to take a quick glance here and share with you a quiz that we use within our clients. So I'm going to set a timer for 30 seconds, and I invite you to go ahead and just note down the answers to these questions. There are a total of 12 questions, and all you need to do is circle yes or no for each statement, and then total them up, how many yeses, how many nos, and then we will summarize what that means moving forward. I'll go ahead and set a timer for now.
Do you have Jeopardy theme music? Some of these are not applicable, probably. I guess you just say no to it.
Sure, that's fine. All right. So if you haven't caught on already, the goal here is to get more no's than yeses. So I invite you, however comfortable you are, to share in the chat how many total yeses you got. The goal here is there's never a point where you're totally human or you're just this perfect company. You know, operations are designed to be indefinite, really. But the purpose is to see the intricacies of our processes, and do they really invite and create space or an environment of comfortability and trust, or are they rigid and controlled, like we experience in many of the companies ourselves as consumers? And so, Andy, if you can share just a couple of examples of how many yeses people got, or how many. Okay.
Mark Lancaster says 2 yeses. Great. I think, are you uncomfortable saying sorry is probably something that resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah.
You get a little bit torn between, I guess apologizing for something versus where does the fault lies, two different things in this particular statement. But we get torn between, is it right Did you make a mistake or did we make a mistake, right? So you still need to apologize for it. Jason Rush says 2 as well.
Awesome. Great. So taking that, what I hope to show today in the next 30 minutes or so as we actually go into the activity is how you turn this into action that drives results. Right now, every company is wondering 3 things. 1, how do you predict your revenue curve? 2, how do you keep costs down? And 3, what's the future consumer behavior pattern? Why and when and how are people going to buy from you? And so our goal today is to help you stay in your lane. Our goal today is to help you realize where the value actually is that you could be providing for your company customers right now and actually charge for it. So let's get into the nitty and gritty because I love this stuff. All right, so customer operations reset. Right now, everyone's questioning their bottom line, right? Even you as a consumer with bills at home, you question, what are you paying for your mortgage? What are you paying for your subscriptions? Everyone is questioning your bottom line. We want to get your company the hard work that you've already put into it, the great systems, the great processes, the great experience, and we want to elevate it above the market competition so that you're not seen as a transaction and your value is not even questioned at all. If we over deliver now for your customer base, the concept is that you will keep top of mind so that when the time comes that they need to purchase, you are there and you're the first person they think of. Petra has done a phenomenal job with this, with the webinar series. Not to toot your own horn, Andy, but on your behalf, I will. The webinar series is all about creating value. These are free for a reason. However, let me be very clear. Andy, and I can speak on your behalf, thank you, is detached from the outcome. Andy's not doing this to generate revenue. Andy's doing this to be valuable and to serve. And so to buy into this concept, and if you don't buy into it, I encourage you to just hop off the webinar. But to buy into this concept, you have to be willing to serve before you sell, to give before you take. The companies that are doing right now are the ones that are actually benefiting on the bottom line. So let's talk about how we do that. Many of you who know me know that a lot of the foundational work I do is surrounding this tool called the Customer for Life Cycle. The Customer for Life Cycle is one of the foundational tools to all of our work at Toyota from the past. I have essentially created a modernized Western version of it. And the idea of this is that you have every experience from the customer's perspective captured in this very easy to understand visual at a glance. You have pre-sales, the first quadrant, you have post-sales, the second quadrant, and then the second half is follow-up and repurchase. Right now, when I say your customer base is the biggest asset you have right now, why do I say that? Because they already know you. They already love you. You don't have to nurture them. You don't have to build awareness for what you do. Hopefully, they've had a positive experience with you. Ideally, they want more from you. What is harder right now is to either fill your pipeline with the first quadrant, which is either cold leads or cold prospects, or partially in between the first and second quadrant, which is, warm leads, people that you've already been in talks with. Really, your customer base is where we want to drive the value. So it's really the second half. Now, when I say here, search, purchase, contract, product or service delivered, this is again from the customer perspective. Where we're focusing on is how do you close the loop to either repurchase more from you or renew. Here's the thing, every company can downgrade a client, they can discount a client. But the moment you lose a client or lose a customer, whether that's B2B or B2C, it costs more to acquire a new one than it does to keep them right now. So we're all focused about retention. We want you to not lose a single customer. As I alluded to earlier, people have needs right now that if you look at that customer experience, their needs are changing. The needs of Petra clients, the needs of my clients are changing. Whether you're B2B or B2C, also consumer or business, they're changing. So the question is, how are we evolving to their real pains? Many of you have heard of the 8 ways before. If you have not, briefly, the 8 ways is a very fundamental tool we use in process improvement and Kaizen of how to identify barriers from your customer having an ideal experience. So I'm going to take a timer for 30 seconds, and there's no wrong answer here. I really encourage you to come up with a minimum of 3. Disregarding all the past and everything you know about your customer, right now, on May 11th, 2020, what are 3 pain points that your customers are going through? And feel free to use this as a way to inspire what they might be struggling with. They might be having non-utilized talent. They might be creating defects because they're trying to work too fast. So feel free to use this as a template or a categorization of what their problems might look like. However, really just having some deep empathy for your customers. What are the top 3 things they're struggling with right now? I'll set a timer and go.
So this is look at these 8 things as a filter and ask the question, what's it like in their shoes, not in yours?
Correct, not in yours. Thank you for patronizing my timer, my little timer. All right, so with that, if anyone wants to share, I invite you to share. Really, this is a safe space. Obviously, as a Petra member, feel free to share in the chat what the top 3 pain points your customer is experiencing right now. Now, as we go about this, I want to, and wait for some of the people to share through the chat, I want to very clearly identify something. And I only am going to say this, Andy, because you pointed out. What I often see with companies, when they go to fix their operations, they try to fix their processes for what is better or convenient for them, rather than what's better or convenient for your customers. And that's why you end up on a website, as an example, where you sign in, you're getting to know this company, there's a banner at the top, there's a pop-up window and a chat bot all at the same time, and you find yourself exiting out, exiting out, exiting out. It's an example where a company kind of shoves you through their processes rather than really creating an experience that's best for the consumer or the customer going through your experience. And so that's what I do. My world is all experience design. I want to realize and help companies realize that your product and service, as promised, is no longer what you can do at a minimum. Really, companies are customers are looking at what's happening before that product or service, what's happening after, and how seamless of an experience is that. So, Andy, what are some examples of things that came through in terms of pain points of their customers?
Waiting, non-utilized talent, and inventory.
Great. I love the waiting example. Who's the industry right now that seems to be flawless and one of the best businesses to be in, but is getting attacked? Financial services. Bank of America's reputation is going down the tank. Wells Fargo reputation was already going down the tank. But because of these PPP loans, granted, now the politics behind all this and how this all was executed on, I mean, that aside, we don't have any control over. However, you can definitely say some of these banks are going to be severely impacted. Why? Because suddenly everyone wanted community banks. So we'll start to see a transition here on the outskirts of COVID, where consumers are looking to be more community-oriented, like community-oriented banks, more boutiques, more local purchases. Airbnb already said that they're predicting people are going to want to travel more locally. And so that's going to be one of the trends we see on the other side of this. So thank you for sharing those pain points. I'm sure you can generate more. As we have deep customer empathy, now we go into how do we deliver for them. So this is the ODA method of establishing your customer operations reset. This normally is a 90-minute sprint that I run my clients through. We're basically experiencing about a 30-minute abbreviated version. So my hope here is to deliver value for you to take this and get results starting tomorrow. Feel free to engage however much or however little you can, depending on what you're multitasking with. I get it, we all do it. But I really encourage you to get the most of this by actually participating for the next few minutes as we figure out how you can generate revenue and new business on the other side of this. So the companies that we have run this through, as an example, one in particular reduced their AR estimation by 80%. So they had kind of estimated how much they were predicting their payables would be, their receivables would be on next month. And that was reduced by 80%. Another company increased their MRR now month over month, the last 2 months, for an average of 36%. We had some companies introduce new product lines, and we've seen some companies use this as an opportunity to actually diversify their revenue stream. So they've built a stronger business by offering more services that are different, but the customer didn't know about in the past. So we're seeing some really exciting things, and I have examples of all of those built within this. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to invite you to think a little bit about what you're doing for your customers. Sounds simple, but it's actually a little bit more elusive than we would think. What does ODA stand for? ODA stands for offer, deliver, and authority. There's 3 simple steps to this. What can you do to deliver value for your customer above and beyond what you're doing now, even sometimes in an unexpected way? What can you do to deliver that method in the most effective way for the customer? And how can you establish authority within your industry to rise above that transactional relationship that most people have with their customers? So the first piece, I'm going to invite you to grab a pencil, or if you prefer digital, we can do this now. And I'm going to set a timer. I have a simple question for you. Based on those 3 pain points, maybe more were on, maybe you recorded more, but based on the 3 that you chose, what can you do for your customers right now that is fast, free, and easy? What value can you provide for your customers that is fast, free, and easy? So I'm going to go ahead and set a timer. Go. All right, so that's 30. As you wrap up, I just want to kind of give a couple of other probing questions that might generate some ideas here. Something to consider is, what can you do for them that's unexpected or outside of your normal scope that still addresses a need they have? Again, if you want to be seen as more than a transaction with your customers, then you have to go outside of your comfort zone to do something that's more than a transaction, to deliver value in a way that's unexpected. And I'll give some examples of those in a moment. So anyone want to share one example of something they can do free, fast, and easy for their customers starting tomorrow, as an example?
So I've got in here survival strategy for next month.
Perfect. Awesome.
I can tell from something that we did very early on, and we started this process to say, what are the things that we have? What is our little bucket that we're really good at? And we said, right now we have resources, we have expertise, because we, work with a lot of different companies and know a lot of different stuff. And at the time it was like, we have time, right? Because we're not traveling. And we said, how do we take that and provide that back to our member group in a way that was, as you said, and how do we do it low cost? Because, revenue was a challenge. So we created Petra forum groups, which the member leader from each company, we get together once a week. It's, usually 10 to 20 of them show up, and we have an hour-long kind of best practice share session.
Awesome.
And we've
got
got
a couple more come through. Were there more in the chat there?
Free facility sanitizing assessment as you reopen.
Amazing. I love it. So as you start to see, my goal here is to generate ideas to provide value with no cost and no tech. You should be able to work within your current operation. And when you start to ask that question of what can you do, there's really a ton of things that you can do for your customers. One of my clients, as an example, is a STEM camp. And because their camp had to go virtual naturally, one of the things they realized is they weren't getting registrations because families were too busy and they didn't know how to draw healthy boundaries in the house to create space for the camp. So they actually did a whole series on parenting during a crisis and a pandemic specifically. And that whole topic around parenting, which is not a STEM camp expertise, is what led to more registrations and a spike in registrations. So we're thinking like, how do we provide value that's seemingly out of scope, but still is something that addresses a pain point? I think feel free to share more. As I think I saw a couple more come through here. As we wrap up with part one, my goal here is to simplify and move forward with results. So my advice is to pick 3 that are the fastest, the easiest, and the cheapest, if not free. Focus on what drives the most value. So not what's easy for you, but what drives the most value for the customer. And then 3, a recommendation is to make one community focus. So what I mean by that is I have a client that's a virtual assistance company, and they actually created a private Facebook group for all of their clients to share real-time information. And the beauty is they hardly do anything. It's all their clients getting together. So the more you can drive value, the better. But one of those values is these customers seeing that they're not alone. So if you can do one that drives the focus of community, that can be highly valuable and advantageous for you as well. Something to consider here. What I've seen is some companies already had a service that they were doing, but they never really packaged it or marketed well to the company. So don't think that this needs to start from scratch. This could be take 3 things you were already doing, but you're kind of doing mediocre, and package it together of how you're helping your customers now. Were there any others that you wanted to share, Andy, before we continue?
Free outsourcing assessment. What should you quit doing? So I think that's free outsourcing assessment. What should you quit doing?
It's a great idea. Yeah, so everyone's looking for time. Everyone's looking for less things to do. That's a great idea. I'm not sure who their constituency is, but it sounds like it's very niche, which is good. We've also seen a company, if you're out there and you have a company that does design really well or does social media really well, you can offer your internal resources to do that. Hey, we're going to do, we're offering our customers 15-minute blocks of time to consult on their social media. Something to consider here too, and it's a little manipulative, but call it for what it is. Not everyone will take you up on these offers. That's not really your goal. Your goal here is to drive value and showing that you're helping. So that alone is valuable for your company, whether they take you up on it or not. So let's move into part 2. How do you deliver these offers? The question becomes, what is the best medium and cadence to deliver this offer of help? So instead of, again, just thinking, oh, these are our marketing platforms or these are our communication channels, the question is, where is your customer? And how can you deliver these offers to them in the best medium and cadence based on where they are? So as an example, before we go into the timer, one of the clients I worked with is in tech, SaaS company, and they decided to do a Zoom call just for their customers. They started it 2 times a week when things were crazy because the cadence was so important to keep up with the change. Now it's reduced to 1 time a week. However, the cadence is in line with what the customer needs, and the medium is easy and fast and free for the customer. And they already have an email communication, so they emailed out to the customer base saying that they were going to start the Zoom call. They made it exclusive, so they said this is just for you. And they made it also a little bit of scarcity by limiting to the number of customers that can join every week. So they said we're only inviting 20 customers a week. So given the 3 offers that you just came up with, if you're packaging this as how we are helping our customers right now get back to life post-COVID, what's the best medium to do that? Not the best social media channel. What's the best medium? Is it voice? Is it video? Is it email? And what's the best cadence based on your customer? So I'm going to go ahead and set a timer for 30 seconds and just go ahead and brainstorm on that one. Go ahead. Okay, great. So some of those that we've seen, if it helps generate any more ideas, in the first offer, if you built a community, that might be the best place, the best medium to share out the offers. We've also seen, creating landing pages on your website, creating them as COVID resources. If you have an online customer portal, you can house it there. A CEO letter is another great way to deliver this, as well as just an existing customer blog. So if anyone is comfortable with sharing, what have they decided based on their offers is a good medium or cadence to deliver? Feel free to send in the chat. And as those get sent in the chat, I'm going to go to my recommendation, which is limit to 3. What you'll see, and Andy will love this, what you'll see as we wrap up here is that the beauty is in the system and how this works together. No one idea standalone is going to get you through this. It's going to be how it's packaged and working together. What were some of the examples that got sent through the chat, Andy?
Marketing automation, email to customers, video. I think video, I wrote down video as well. So I think that's way more powerful than text.
Right.
Reserve an hour every day with 15-minute slots to discuss on the phone with a follow-up email within 24 hours. So phone call, I had phone call down here as well.
Awesome. Okay, so I love that you mentioned phone calls. Actually, one of the things I recommend. Let's summarize this real briefly. Pick 3. Don't overdo it. Don't try to push it through all your mediums. Pick 3 where your customer actually is. So focus on what's most effective, not just maximizing the effort. The last thing is I recommend making one a target call campaign. So one of the customers that went through this sprint back in March, they came up with this idea and I have been telling everyone about it ever since. Right now, everyone has Zoom fatigue, right? And never before has it been easier to get someone on the phone. They're not transiting, they're not moving, they're not traveling. So they're there on the phone. Anyone who's in sales knows that that phone has a better conversion rate than email and has a better conversion rate, obviously, than text or any kind of communication without voice. So anything that you can do via phone, and I'm talking, the data is 30 to 40% conversion rate. So this company in particular, the CEO had been running this company for 12 years. He admitted to me that he's never called 100% of the client base, which is about 375 clients. They created a call script, a voicemail script, and then an email to follow up to the voicemail for every customer. They trained every employee. They have a team of about 15. They trained every employee, took away responsibilities, and made it a 72-hour sprint. And they called 100% of their customer base in a span of 72 hours. It went so well in actually generating revenue, generating referrals, that they then scheduled an iteration for every 2 weeks. So the CEO decided every 2 weeks, it's an all hands on deck activity that the company was going to do collectively to serve their customers. They actually then generated through the second round a synthesized report where they were able to gather data from their customer base, summarize it, and report it back to their customer base. So again, driving value. Your customer base wants to know what everyone else is doing. So how could you be a vessel for that information? And that's one of the ways they did that. And they're still doing it to this day. And the CEO said he'll most likely have it continue for, indefinitely because it's providing so much value.
Hilary, were they asking, were they making that offer from the
Great question.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Thank you for answering. Thank you for asking this. I almost forgot. No, only at the end. So the way they structured the call was, we're calling to check in on you. It was more of a message of hope, trust, and relationship. We're calling to check in on you. How are you holding up? What's going on? So they opened very softly. Then they had 3 to 5, they have 3 to 5 questions on every call round. They have 3 to 5 questions that they ask every customer as a way to gather data and help understand and get a pulse of what's happening in the customer base. And then they end with, we just want to be 100% clear. These are the 3 things we're doing to help. So they don't mention the offer until the very end, and they don't phrase it as, hey, we're running a campaign or you can get 20% off. Please do not make any of your offers a discount. You do not want to discount yourself. That just makes you more of a transaction. You want to focus on adding value. It's a more for more mentality rather than cutting down and trying to secure a buck. So thank you for asking that question. All right, so the third step, which is exciting. How do you establish authority? This is going to really push you outside of your comfort zone, but I promise you the benefits that you will reap from this are beyond anything you could imagine. I'm encouraging every one of my clients right now to establish what I'm calling a state of the industry. You see this in a few kind of templates like EOS as well, where, like Scaling Up, where they have state of the union. So here, I'm talking about state of the industry. Everyone's wondering what's happening in the industry. If you want to be treated as a market leader and you want to be trusted for what's going to happen and what's going to be predicted in the future, then start saying it. There's never been an easier time to have an opinion. So I encourage you to establish the state of the industry. It can be as short or as long as you want, but I have a question, which is based on your customer base and what you just explored in terms of their empathy around what they're going through. What medium is best to share the state of the industry? So I'm going to go ahead and set a timer, and if you can go ahead and answer that question, there's no wrong answer, and then we'll explore some ideas after this. All right, go ahead.
So this would be like sharing it with the public.
Yeah. So this is geared towards your customer base, but you can make it public, if that makes sense. Okay. So it should, the language should be completely directed towards your customer base, but we will talk about how to make it public in a moment. All right. So some of the things that I've seen other companies do here is, as an example from the first one, if you create an offer that's a private Facebook group, you could do the state of the industry in that private Facebook group. You could do a live on LinkedIn if you have that built in your profile. You could do a live on Facebook. You could do a live on IG. Anywhere that you think or know your customers are, that's where you want to go. That's the medium you want to use. So it doesn't necessarily mean a social media platform. It could be that you record a video and share it out through email because you have a great open rate. So just be clear, the medium is not just social media platform. It's really, where are your customers?
Or is this, is that particular piece, does it have an expiration date on it?
No, that's the beauty. So why does this matter? Because everyone's looking for help right now. We all feel a sense of, lack of safety. We all feel insecure. There's so much curiosity and prediction around what's going to happen, but really, who knows? Like, in the grand scheme of things, there's so much that's unpredictable right now, despite our best efforts to want to control it. And so whatever you can do to come a front and center as a sturdy, calm, assertive voice in the marketplace, it's not necessary that you are right or wrong. It's necessary that you're having a voice and showing up. That's what people are looking for, and that's what people are remembering. So my advice, just pick one medium and pick a cadence that is reasonable with your industry. If you're in the restaurant industry right now, you should probably be doing this twice a week because the restaurant industry is still changing rapidly. If you're in the minerals business, you're probably changing a little less rapidly, right? So focus on a cadence where the industry is changing and match that cadence. Also focus where your customers are, as I mentioned. And then here's the trick to answer your question, Andy. The language should be entirely focused on your customer base. This is not about generating leads. However, leads will come. So the language and the verbiage you use should be about, this is us sharing with our customer base what's happening in the industry, what you can expect. At the end of that state of the industry, you share your offers, and I recommend to go live on one platform. Why go live? Because it just amplifies your message. If you prefer to do it private, like an email campaign that's pre-recorded video, no problem. Just if it's convenient and it's easy, going live is a great resource to get that message out to people who aren't your customers. But again, this value is for your customer base. We should be serving the people who already know us, who love us, who have trusted in us. And by doing so, you will benefit and get results on the back end of this. So let's wrap this up and move to questions. How do we move this into action? You have your 3 offers. This is an example pulled from one of the clients. We ran this through. They offered free online ordering, free physical signage design. This was actually a restaurant tech company that I worked with for several years, and they did free social media consultation. They decided to deliver those 3 offers by an email to a customer 2 times a week, a weekly Zoom call, and the call outreach 100% every 2 weeks. And then they use the platform of Facebook because a lot of restaurant owners are on Facebook. Now here is the secret sauce. And if you stayed for this whole time, you're gonna be benefiting the most. The secret sauce is iteration. Every 2 weeks, I'm advising you to revisit this and iterate. How did your customer needs change? How did the wants of your customers change? How did the delivery work? Did it work well or did it not? What's a better platform to use? Maybe add on one if it's reasonable and easy and free. And then how did the authority go? How did the state of the industry go? Should it be longer? Should it be shorter? Should it be more tactical? Should it be more inspirational? 100% focused on your customer base. This, as Andy knows and loves as much as I do, is a system. It's not that one of these great ideas stand alone are really strong. It's how you package them together. So when we talk about implementation, I do not want you doing this work. I want your people doing this work. So assign a PIC for each one of them, a person in charge. Set target dates. Again, we want to move fast to market. You want to be 3 to 5 days ahead of what your customers are thinking. So you want to be delivering before they knew they even had a need for something. Then package it as a system of what we're doing to help. The best tagline I found recently is like, how to get your life back post-COVID, something like that. We're helping you get your life back and really connect to that human side of the struggles that your customers are facing, whether that's B2B or B2C. Either way, it's irrelevant. And then schedule a 2-week cadence to review. When people say we're in a game of rapid change, we're in a game of pivoting, those who pivot will win, the answer is in your cadence. You need to be changing just ahead of your customer changing. So there's no perfect answer for what that cadence is, but I'm finding about a 2-week cadence for reviewing this is ideal. So that collectively is your customer operations reset. That will drive new business with your existing customer base. That will generate new revenue from referrals. That will also generate innovative ideas for how to drive value in ways that were really unpredicted before. What this does is it helps shift our perspective from an organizational perspective that's divided by departments. I hope what you see from this is not a marketing initiative. This touches all aspects of your organization. So we're really looking at it with a deep customer perspective, their experience and how you can drive value for them and as a result, the business benefits. And I want you to remember every digital experience is a human experience. As we move to be more virtual, there's pros and cons. It improves efficiency and productivity, supposedly, but it also takes away from the human connections. So the more you can build in components into your processes that make it more human and cultivate that trust, the better off you'll be and the more closer you'll be to their customers and be able to deliver for them. Last fall, some of you may have remember, there was a business roundtable where almost 200 of the top world leaders came together in New York to talk about the future purpose of a corporation. And walking away from that, they basically agreed that the corporation should be worth more than just serving shareholders. And it's about serving the community. The quote specifically from JP Morgan's CEO was that major employers are investing in the workers and communities because it's the only way to be successful over the long term. So if you're looking for a short game, you're looking to sell out and sell your company and get out of here, no problem. I have nothing against that strategy. But right now, for those looking to play the long game, that are looking to drive value and generate wealth for you and your people, it's about looking inward and being human and delivering value over and above and beyond the customer expectations so that they remember you on the other side of this. And that's what I hope you can achieve from today's conversation. So boom, we covered a lot. To wrap up, before we jump to some Q&A, if you want any of these resources, the 8 waste file or the Customer for Life worksheet to do with your team, feel free to go to hilarycorna.com/restart. Those are all downloadable from there. Also, if you want to actually implement this and move into action, because you have stayed till the end and committed to your time to Andy, I'm giving away free 15-minute increments of my time to help give input on your core strategy that you developed today. As far as staying connected with me, I'm probably most active and write a lot on LinkedIn, so you can follow me there. Twitter, I'm usually the most funny, and IG, I'm usually the most personable. So with that, thank you. I hope that you got a lot of inspiration and creative ideas for how to really move forward and get ahead of all this. And with that, I'll hand it over to Andy and we can kind of do some questions.
Awesome. Well done. And great content. I took a ton of notes, probably more notes than I've taken in a long time on an hour. So I appreciate that. If anybody does have any questions, please put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A box and I'll be sure to ask them. One of the things, I've got something that's directly from me. One of the things that we did is we kind of divided everything up into short-term and long-term. And for us, short-term was like, March till the end of June. And then long-term would be after that. And we said the focus points for the short-term were retention, value creation, brand awareness, and testing and learning, before we moved into kind of what's the creation of the organization look like after that. So, focal points right there. And I keep going back to those. And I give you that as a little bit of pretext to one of the things that I'm struggling with is at what point, because this conversation happens a lot right now, at what point do we begin to make a shift to something that is revenue generating? So,
I think you already can.
Okay. Well, so how does that look when you've been doing something for weeks that you don't charge for to be able to charge for it? Or do you not do that and you say, and you keep doing what you're doing because it's valuable, it's brand awareness, it's helpful.
Yeah.
You do something completely different.
So this is where you implement either scarcity, exclusivity, or urgency. You make it time bound. So as an example, the one that I shared was restaurant tech, and they offered free online ordering. So what they started to do about halfway through making that offer, those 3 initial offers, they actually added on more things. So you can decide whether to cut away or add on. It just depends on your industry, but they actually added on because it was easy. With the free online ordering, about halfway through, which means about 4 weeks in, they decided, hey, we are going to now make this time bound. So it said free online ordering through May 30th. Starting May 30th, the fee is going to be $100 a month, which actually led into their MRR. Now, here's the beauty. If you're doing something that's valuable, that's really valuable, people will pay. That's an easy example because it's a restaurant. They need online ordering right now. However, there's other things that you could do here. As an example, I'll give a shout out to Terry if he's still on. Terry runs an automotive dealership in Canada. And Terry came up with this idea of offering free delivery services. So if you need if you need maintenance on your car in the workshop, they do free delivery services and pickup. So what Terry basically is iterating to now is, hey, free delivery is going to be offered through the end of March or May. And starting June 1st or whatever that date is, it's going to be a premium service at a premium cost for X amount of money. Pricing, you'll have to use your strategy and expertise on pricing, but pricing that in a way that people would actually pay for it. So that's a service that people really want and need right now, but offering it for free is a way to drive value. Making it time bound is a way to show people that value is limited. So I think that can be transitioned. Just make it time bound. Use urgency, use exclusivity. You could say, hey, it's going to be free for the first 10 people. After that, charge a fee, things like that.
Okay, awesome. Let me see. I've got a couple of things on here. When you say state of the industry, so I feel like it's just you and me talking right now. We'll see what everybody else kind of chimes in. But for us, when I say state of the industry, and because I looked across the 8 things, and I could have put any 8 of them in 8 different companies, right? So we work with over 100 companies. What would be my state? What industry is it? Because I've got food service, I've got manufacturing, I've got
professional services.
Okay.
Yeah. What's happening in professional services, what's happening in consultation and management consulting, in B2B advising, and how those changes are affecting your customer base. For example, like, as someone who does a similar line of work, the question becomes, how do people engage with you differently, but still get the same results, if not better results? What are best practices of people doing in that space? What are we seeing in terms of how it's affecting pricing and promptization? And like, having a voice in that is really important, because it shows that you're ahead of the curve, you're thinking ahead, you have space and time and calmness to strategize on those things, and that builds trust and rapport back in your customer base.
Yeah, even though that's not my customer base.
Yeah, and that's okay. It's more so seeing that your customers, seeing that in the space you're in, you are better than the rest. Because you're standing up and having a voice in your space, that means, oh, well, Andy, I should trust him. He knows what he's talking about. So it's that trust. It's not necessarily driving value for them. It's elevating you above the competition.
Okay, that makes sense. That's helpful. Thank you.
And I appreciate, to give a shout out to you, you do those 1 to 2 minute videos on LinkedIn. I think that's been great. It's a little piece of, valuable content that can be easily digestible. So what I would love to see is, hey, what's happening in management consulting from Andy, Andy's perspective? Not to change this around to Petra, but.
No, it's good. And I hadn't thought about it in the light of what you just said. So it's like, because we feel like we're moving pretty fast and innovating really, really quickly from a very, very early on, and continuing to do it. And my audience is like, well, that's great, but it doesn't really help them. But I understand kind of the thought process now.
Yeah, it's not necessarily, that part is not necessarily about driving value for them. It's about building trust with them to see that you're still pushing yourself forward, that you're striving to be one of the best, that you're aiming for operational excellence. And that's what builds trust versus, I'm sure many ideas come to mind when I say this, but there's some companies that have been silent and you're kind of like, what are they doing? And it makes it more questionable.
Or they go out there and talk about publicly all the good that they're doing, which is even worse in my opinion.
Yes. And you'll see, by being human, I'm not saying to do that at all. I think that's a whole nother conversation. This is about staying in your lane, moving from transactional to a stronger relationship of trust, so that you earn their dollar moving forward, so that you actually learn ways to productize in your company that you haven't in the past, because the needs are changing. So if you just stick to the old way of doing things, there's going to be a point where you're not providing value for your customer base anymore. Your customer base is changing, and the more you have a pulse on what is changing for them and you're delivering ahead of their needs, you will create revenue.
Awesome. Well, listen, thanks so much for being with us today. We're a little bit over our time. I don't have any questions coming in, so that means you covered everything perfectly. So well done. The slides will be available. Obviously, Hilary's been very generous with her time, and also giving 15-minute intervals for people to call and ask questions, which is very good. We'll put all that information in the recap along with a video of this. And then Janelle's been on here typing everything up. Kristen McLean is on here. We'll have this cool little visual that goes along with it. So make sure that you're looking back at thevividinkcompany.com, which will also put that into the recap. And then we got some webinars coming up this week. So the whole CARES Act and PPP and forgiveness for that is the next kind of big challenge, Hilary, as you're aware of. So we've got a webinar, a workshop where you can attend. All of this information is on petracoach.com, and so will the recap be as well. So again, thank you. Great to see you, Hilary. We appreciate your time very, very much.
Very welcome.
For everybody that was as a participant today, if we can do anything at all for you, please reach out, and we're here to help. So thank you very much.